Welcome to the 128th season of the Canadian Club Toronto, Canada's Podium. For over a century, this platform has been a gathering place for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to discuss the most pressing issues of our time.
We've been having important discussions and debates around this podium in this country for well over a century. I call this a historic podium of record.
Our club's always been a forum for visionaries, public figures, and decision makers to command attention to the issues of our time.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to have you here, and welcome to our friends online. My name is Karen Restuel, a director with the Canadian Club Toronto, and your host for today's event. I'm also proud to share that I grew up in Sudbury and have many family members, many family members and friends who work in mining and who have long worked in mining. Canada is home to some of the world's most important mining communities, and Sudbury is at the top, supporting over 19,500 workers in mining, processing, and supply sectors, and producing a significant portion of the country's mineral output. With over 300 mining, supply, and service companies, the region plays a crucial role in powering Canada's economy and supporting North America's critical mineral needs. Despite being a global leader in sustainable mining practices and holding key critical minerals essential for securing supply chains, it is an understatement to say that Canada is not fully leveraging this strategic advantage for national growth and prosperity and to thwart recent geopolitical threats. Today, you will hear from Sudbury Mayor Paul Lefebvre and leading sector experts as they discuss how to strengthen Canada's critical minerals sector by expanding midstream processing facilities, vital to building a complete end-to-end supply chain here in Ontario, and ensuring that we have the secure resources that we need for the future. Our ability to offer you these timely discussions is due to the support of our partners and sponsors. Today's event is being generously sponsored by the City of the City of Sudbury, my bad. I was just checking. You're all paying attention. You passed the test. We are grateful that Canadian Bankers Association is our season sponsor and that Air Canada is our official airline sponsor. Canada's Forest Trust Corporation is our smart forest planting partner and supports our goal of reducing the club's carbon footprint by planting and stewarding a forest in our honor. And we warmly welcome students from the University of Toronto's Mineral Engineering program. Thank you for joining us. Before the panelist introduction, let me share some club information with you. I invite you to visit our website at canadianclub.org. Besides event and membership information, we've got a great on-demand event feature. I also encourage you to share information about today's event on your favorite social media platforms. And I'm confident that you have questions about today's topic. Please take a moment to fill out the Q&A cards on your tables. There's pens there as well. Our team will be collecting them and sharing them with our moderator throughout the session. And for our online participants, please hit the red Q&A button on the right side of your screen, where we open the floor for questions. And now it's time to introduce our panel members. Perry DeLise is the founder and managing partner at Wildebow DeLise, LLP, one of Canada's top corporate finance law firms. A leading expert in technology transactions and global mining, he serves as lead Canadian director of SIBO Canada and Mount Logan Capital Inc., and director at McFarland Lake Mining. He is also a native of Sudbury and one of its biggest cheerleaders. Heather Exner-Perot is a senior fellow at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute and special advisor to the Business Council of Canada. With 20 years of experience in Indigenous Arctic and resource governance, she also advises Indigenous Resource Network and serves as a global fellow at the Wilson Centre. Paul Lefebvre, Mayor of Greater Sudbury, elected in 2022, Mayor Lefebvre serves on the Greater Sudbury Police Services Board and the Development Corporation. A former MP for Sudbury from 2015 to 2021, and Parliamentary Secretary for Natural Resources. He is also an accomplished tax lawyer and former University of Ottawa professor. And last but not least, our moderator today is Matthew Bondi. Matthew founded Bondi & Associates after serving as Deputy Chief of Staff to Ontario's Premier. Previously, he was VP of External Relations at Communitech, one of North America's largest tech incubators. We'll begin with opening remarks from Sudbury's mayor, and then he'll join the other panel members in conversation. Your Worship, Canada's podium is yours.
Rich Karen, I'm just sharing notes with her that my wife's family is from where she's from as well. So we're from Sudbury, but from a beautiful area as well of French River. Donc, bonjour tout le monde, Annie et bonjour. So it's really an honor for me as Mayor of the City of Greater Sudbury to be here today at the Canadian Club. Merci au Canadian Club pour m'accueillir aujourd'hui et me permettre de discuter de ce sujet important pour ma ville du Grand Sudbury, pour l'Ontario et pour le Canada. I really want to extend my sincere thanks to the Canadian Club President, Tanya Van Biesen, as well as Executive Director Colin Kennedy, and for the invitation to speak to all of you today. I also want to begin by acknowledging the land we stand on, and I know, Karen, that you did that, but in doing so, I really want to recognize the rich Indigenous heritage of Indigenous peoples that have shaped our country here in the Greater Toronto Area, and certainly across Canada. So nearly a century ago, Sir Winston Churchill stood before this very club in 1929, speaking to Canadians about the challenges and opportunities of his time. Today, we find ourselves in a similar position, facing global uncertainty, but also immense opportunity, especially when it comes to Canada's economic sovereignty. Sir Winston also once quipped that no one never wants to see a good crisis go to waste. We are living through a moment that will define our future. The geopolitical landscape is shifting rapidly. Under President Trump, the United States is upending decades of partnership with Canada and many other allied nations. Taiwan, for example, the Southeast Asian democracy that lives under constant threat of Chinese invasion, is being threatened with 100% tariffs on its world-class semiconductors, while the U.S. angles for more investment in domestic production. The United States, as well, is now aggressively pursuing control of critical minerals, leveraging economic and security pressures on Ukraine, Greenland, and our own country, Canada, to secure its own supply chains. You need to understand, the United States is late to the game. It is 100% reliant on China for a quarter of its identified 50 critical minerals, and also significantly reliant on China for 29 of those critical minerals. China is way ahead, starting its industrial strategy with critical minerals as its bedrocks many decades ago, and having since that time developed its processing and manufacturing capabilities to the highest of standards. Canada is the largest provider of steel, aluminum, potash, zinc, and nickel to the U.S., and second largest supplier of copper to the U.S. So while the U.S. is beholden to China for a number of critical minerals, Canada still remains the Americans' primary source of critical minerals. And so, for our part, instead of being the strategic ally to our neighbors in this sector, which we have been for generations, We are being taunted about becoming the 51st American state, while also being expected to radically boost defense and security expenditures to earn our portion of the U.S. security umbrella. While uncomfortable, the Trump administration's dramatic early moves communicate to the international community what America wants. Under Trump, America wants deals to boost its internal economy and burden share to support allied defenses. So what should we do? I'm here to tell you that my city, Greater Sudbury, and our partners across Ontario are uniquely positioned to help Canada lead on both fronts while shoring up our own economic sovereignty by fueling modern technology, defense, and clean energy. The reality is, while we are recognized as a mining powerhouse, Canada can be doing so much more and truly unlock the value and opportunity of our endowment of critical minerals. No one in the world mines more sustainably and innovatively than Canada. Yet, we continue to move slowly in getting resources out of the ground and into our processing facilities. This must change. Greater Sudbury, the city I'm proud to represent, is already leading the way. Greater Sudbury has 9 operating base metal mines, nickel, copper, cobalt, and platinum-based metals, within the city itself, and another 10 mines under development, again, within the city itself. Sweden, a mining country, and I don't like to pick on Sweden, but sometimes I always refer back to them because they're good friends. They have 10 operating mines within the whole country, and they're in Europe a mining powerhouse. So compare that to us with 9 operating mines within the city, 10 developing mines. It just shows the wealth of or endowment of our critical minerals we have in Greater Sudbury. While the U.S. has 1 nickel-producing mine, the Eagle mine in Michigan. It also produces copper. And where do they transform the nickel into, certainly the ore into the nickel that they need? It's done in Sudbury, in our smelters. But beyond extraction, what makes us unique in Sudbury is our fully integrated mining complex, one of the most advanced in the world. We have 2 smelters, 2 refineries, a mill, and the research expertise through Laurentian University, Cambridge College, and Collège Boréal, all within a single region, making us a powerhouse of sustainable mining innovation. We also have over 350 mining supply and service businesses that service not only Sudbury, but the whole entire world. This ecosystem, I would argue, is a strategic advantage for the entire democratic world, let alone Canada. Cet écosystème constitue, selon moi, un avantage stratégique pour l'ensemble du monde démocratique et également pour le Canada. In Sudbury, we have worked hand in hand with our local Indigenous communities, Atik-Mishinga-Anishinaabeg and Wahnapitae First Nation, by fostering real reconciliation by making them partners in economic development. They are actively involved at the table, participating in events like Prospectors Developers Association of Canada Conference, and as well as certainly there are MOUs and there are agreements between our mining companies and our communities. Actually, a few weeks ago, we were at PDAC, and we had a session on the agenda to talk about this. So we had myself as mayor, Chief of Atik-Mishinga, we had the Chief of Wahnapitae, Larry Rock, as well as Georg Gilpin from Valais, sitting down to show the world what it means to have a mining community with the respect of our Indigenous partners. Talk about, it's not easy, it's a challenge, but it's about sitting down together and having those hard conversations that we're able to move forward. The explaining of where we were 50 years ago, where we are today, and where we're going 50 years from now. And people still have a 1950s, 60s vision of what Sudbury is, the lunar landscape. Without realizing that, fast forward to today, we have people coming from around the world to learn about how we completely transformed and reclaimed our environment, the Sudbury story. We are global leaders in environmental remediation, having planted over 10 million trees, reducing our SO2 emissions by 98%, and bringing all of our 330 lakes, again within the city, back to pristine condition. And if you need more convincing how far we've come, once our iconic super stack, that's still standing, but it's about to be decommissioned, which was the tallest freestanding structure in Canada before the CN Tower came along, as I said, is going to be decommissioned in the next few years. So our expertise in these areas, as well as in mining, has helped us forge partnerships and relationships around the world. This has led to many newcomers from around the globe coming to Sudbury to work in mining and just to live in our great city and have great jobs. Our population is growing. We are over 180,000 people, helping to diversify our community and drive innovation. So why is this even important? Well, our world has changed, not just in recent months, but over the last decades. Nickel is not just something found in stainless steel. Before, that's what we did. We extracted, right? We explored, we extracted, and then we went through our smelters and we shipped it around the world to make stainless steel. We are in the 4th industrial revolution, with the growing use of semiconductors and data processing machines, battery technologies for EVs, electric vehicles, energy storage, and advancements in defense and aerospace technology. North American demand for minerals alone in this sector is estimated to increase by 500% by 2045. And that's not counting the needs for Europe and our allied Asian countries. So it's a race between China and the US, with the US far behind. And we in Canada, and certainly in Ontario, have a role to play because of strategic areas like Sudbury. The US obviously cannot do this on its own. We know this because, as I said, they only have one nickel mine in Michigan, in northern Michigan. And the high-grade nickel from our mines in Sudbury supplies 60% of the United States military equipment needs. Yes, it's from Sudbury, shipped across into the US military. And we've been doing this not for the past few years, since World War II. So that's how integrated our supply chains and our friendship is. So if we want to play an even more important role in this race, we must obviously reduce our reliance on China and de-risk critical mineral supply chains in Ontario and Canada. So for Canada, the race to develop and process these minerals is about much more than the mining sector. It underscores a new security paradigm to protect and enhance our economic and national interests in an evolving world order. But why is the mayor of the City of Northern Ontario, City of Sudbury, here talking to you about this? It's because a community like ours, you know what, we're okay with mining. I'll say that's what we do. We're okay with extracting, smeltering, and then certainly then shipping it out. But now we're saying, listen, we're okay with the pollution, the slag and the tailings in our backyard. But we want to see more of that advanced processing and more of the advanced manufacturing. At least if it's not done in Sudbury, it's done in Ontario, and it's done in our own country. As long as the value added is done in our area, we're creating jobs, attracting the investment, and strengthening Canada's negotiating position on the global stage. So don't get me wrong, it's not all about Sudbury. I certainly want to share with all the rest of the province and the country. But we want to be the partners that in the manufacturing sector that we need to do in our province and again in our own country. Now, to do that, we need our own industrial strategy with a real national commitment to mining. We need governments at all levels to prioritize the sector and make sure we aren't leaving our economic future in the hands of other nations. And I know the province of Ontario has done a really good job of this. And I want to recognize the new Minister of Mines. He's not here with us today, but Stephen Lecce has been named the Minister of Energy and Mines. And I really like the fact that we have tacked in mines with energy. I know some people have asked me, what do you think that means? It raises the importance of mining in our province to the energy, to the level of the file of energy. And I also want to recognize the investment by the province of Ontario, their commitment to invest $500 million through the Critical Minerals Processing Fund in strategically located facilities. I believe this is a game changer. And the desire by our province to fully integrate EV supply chain in Ontario, along the federal government's investments in Honda, Stellantis, and Volkswagen. These are excellent moves that we should all benefit from, not only from the Southern Ontario, but in all of Ontario. So your leadership has been instrumental in driving economic growth, and it is through such collaborative efforts that we can achieve our goals. So what's the roadmap to make this happen? First, we need to accelerate exploration and development of new mining projects, ensuring that we maintain our competitive edge. The cost of mining extraction is capital intensive. We need to explore the possibility of offtake agreements, as well as further tax incentives. The rest of the world is doing this, so we need to do the same. We need to decrease the time to obtain the permits, and it is essential that the certainty of process be provided at the same time. I'm encouraged that Mr. Paul Lefebvre and Mr. Carney have both pledged to have one review, one project, regardless of size. These projects are in the national interest, and so consolidation of government processes is key. These projects should be encouraged by government, not hampered. Second, we must build a refining and our processing capacity. I mentioned that certainly in Sudbury, that's what we do, but there's more that can be done, particularly in key materials like nickel sulfate and pre-cathode active materials, so we can support the growing electric vehicle and defense sectors. One opportunity at our doorstep in Ontario is the production, as I said, of cathode materials in batteries for EVs. There are a few ingredients that make the cathode, and one such is nickel sulfate and sulfuric acid. There's only one facility in Canada, au Quebec, I think it means Quebec, and it's near Montreal. It's a partnership between GM, POSCO, and Vale. And where does the ore come from, and the nickel that goes into the facility? Most of it comes from Sudbury. So Certainly for us, as I said, we're okay with the mining extraction. We're okay with the processing and the pollution that comes with that. But we want to see more done here. And I believe Ontario needs to develop its own nickel sulfate processing capacity in Sudbury, along with the pre-cathode active material production capabilities, and even for the CAM part as well. We have the land, we certainly have the talent, and we have the resources, as I mentioned, the 9 mines and the 10 developing mines, and over 100 years of mineral processing experience needed to do this. We have our local Indigenous community leaders at the table to do this as well. So I'm really to partner with the provincial government, Premier Ford, whose leadership in Ontario has been instrumental in driving economic growth to get it done. So this plant will not just benefit Sudbury. In addition to the nickel and Sudbury Basin, this plant could also receive ore from the Crawford Mine project in Timmins, as well as a potential ring of fire with Wyloo Minerals in the ring of fire area. Because I've often asked about the ring of fire, people don't realize it's 1,700 kilometers away from Sudbury. I thought I mentioned that to my friends in Toronto. I don't understand the geography of our massive province. And I say it's great, but then they say, well, why is it important? Well, where is the nickel going to go? There's only one place, and that's in Sudbury. That's what we do. We have 2 smelters and I think the refineries. So it just makes sense to certainly support that, but it has to be done in the right way with the First Nation communities as well. And another ingredient in battery materials, in addition to nickel, is lithium and cobalt. And now I was very pleased, and I commend Minister Fedeli, Minister Wilkinson for their investments in Frontier Lithium Refinery in Thunder Bay. It was announced at PDAC. And the cobalt refinery with the electro battery materials in Cobalt, Ontario. I see Trent is here. So it was a great announcement last week, I believe. Yes, I would agree. So the argument that I'm presenting to you today is that nickel sulfate refinery has to be in Sudbury. It is the missing piece to allow us to have all the ingredients essential to producing the whole supply chain of batteries in our own province. And I know that is a goal of the Premier, and certainly I want to be part to work with the Premier to make it happen in our province. And third, we need strategic partnerships to make it happen with investors, industry leaders, communities, and governments to unlock the full economic potential of our critical minerals sector. So when we talk about the PCAM and the CAM plants, we don't do that in Canada. That's not what we do. The best in the world are the South Koreans and the Japanese. That's what they do. As I mentioned about POSCO being in Bécancour in Montreal, they're one of the leaders in the world, and there's others, again, in Japan and South Korea. That's why I'll be leading a Sudbury trade mission to Japan and South Korea actually next week, along with I call them my 2 Indigenous chiefs. They're good friends of mine from our area, from Tikmashing and Wanapitei. Industry leaders like Vale, Glencore, Magna Mining, Frontier Lithium, Electro Battery Materials will also be joining me to go to Japan and South Korea to advocate for their investments in Ontario and in Canada. It's kind of rare. You'll have a mayor and 2 First Nation chiefs saying, I want more processing and I want more supply coming out of our ground, teaming up with suppliers like Vale, Glencore, Magna, Frontier, and Electro Battery Materials to say we can do it here in Northern Ontario. And earlier this year, the U.S. Defense Department made it clear that secure access to critical minerals is essential for military and defense applications. And Canada has the ability to be the secure, stable, and innovative supplier the world needs. This isn't just about economic opportunity, it's about security. With national support for investments in our military, the highest it has been certainly in my lifetime, let's ensure that the critical minerals required in our defense procurement leverage mine development as well. So critical minerals is not just a mining story, it's a manufacturing story. Paul Lefebvre was just in Sudbury discussing critical minerals, and I encourage Mark Carney to visit the whole round tables and to see firsthand how our city is ready to deliver for Canada. As I've said, we need federal, provincial investments in these projects, and I invite both leaders to commit to making it happen, like the Ford government has. If they want to lead this country, they need to be ready to lead on mining, on resource security, and on economic sovereignty. While the United States has a decision to make about their future and who they want to work with and who will be receiving the tariffs, we in Canada also have a choice about the future of our own critical minerals industry. We can choose to lead, to innovate, and to secure our place in the industries of the future. If it's not with the U.S., well, we have partners in Europe and Asia that can be customers too. At the end of the day, the world wants our critical minerals, and we have a decision to make. Frankly, though, I would argue, the reason we do have a decision to make at all is because of Sudbury's strategic advantage. So let's not waste this moment. Let's seize this opportunity before us, unlock Canada's, Ontario's, and Greater Sudbury's full potential, and secure our place in the industries of the future of the world together. Merci. Thank you. chairs. Thank you.
So are the microphones on?
Yes.
I think they're on. Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you for that set of comments to frame up this chat with some of our friends and colleagues. Something that I'd like to do just to get started is first, can we take a minute and just, as a group, say thank you to the incredible staff who are taking care of us here?
Yeah.
Just a great job. Just a great job. I think maybe if we can start this way, I want to give the mayor a chance to catch his breath. And then Heather, Perry, we heard a little bit about your distinguished CVs. I want to help people get a more earthy understanding of where you spend most of your time and where that develops into the standing to talk a little bit today about critical minerals and their future. So Heather, just in layman's terms, where do you spend your time on these issues?
Okay, great. Well, I'm here to learn more about Sudbury, great mining town. I'm from Saskatoon, which is another great mining town. If you didn't know, the potash is really, really close. You could see it if you went on top of your second floor bedroom. You could see a potash mine or two. And Saskatchewan obviously is also a great mining province. So that's how I got into thinking about resource development. I always say, I talk about energy now a lot too. I always say I came through it from the back door, from the Indigenous development side. So working in Saskatchewan at the University of Saskatchewan, did my PhD on Arctic Northern development. And Arctic Northern development was always Indigenous development, which was always resource development. And I stand by that today. The greatest economic opportunities to achieve economic self-determination for Indigenous communities is resource development done right. It became a little bit more political, I would say, especially after Russia invaded Ukraine. Then the focus really became on the security side of it, the critical mineral side of it. And so that's where I've been focusing with Macdonald-Laurier Institute for the past 2 years. And now I'm here. All I want in this world is for Canada to be an energy and resource superpower, and I will not stop until we are.
Well,
Here, here. And today's part of that journey for Canada, and we're gonna keep that going. Perry, tell us a little bit about your background. The mayor refers to you affectionately as Sudbury's ambassador in Toronto. So say a bit about that.
Yeah, well, interesting. I'm born and raised in Sudbury. My wife is from Sudbury. All of my family's there, as is hers. And we still call Sudbury home.
Yeah.
My kids are in Toronto and went to school in Toronto, but they too call Sudbury home, their second home. So I'm a proud Sudburyan, as everyone knows. And just before I say any more, I've been doing this sort of stuff for Sudbury for a long time. And we've never had a mayor speak like that about our future and what we can do. And I've been advocating forever that Sudbury is more than a mining town. It always has been, but it's never held itself out that way. And that's what today's about, getting this message out to the people to let them know that Sudbury really can be a world leader, not just in mining, but in everything to do with mining. And as we expand our secondary industry, more than just extraction and smelting, more than just a mining town, Sudbury is and will be. It's got 3 excellent academic institutions in College Boreal, Cambrian College, and Laurentian University. They're leaders in this area. We need to tell the world about that. We need to tell the country about that. And that's what's starting today and under Paul's leadership.
That's wonderful. Thank you for that. So maybe let's just go back to Heather for a second here. So Heather, you spend a lot of your time understanding the regulatory regimes, the geopolitical currents that are relevant to resource extraction and development. So when you hear the mayor of Canada's mining capital talk so aspirationally about where we can go from here, help the folks understand a little bit about the headwinds we face as a country that is famously kind of over-governed in a lot of these areas. What are the kinds of dynamics in the regulatory and political environment that we need to do some tackle blocking on so that we can unleash Sudbury's potential?
Great. I know you're going to come back to the defense.
I sure will.
I'll close this up for now. So So Canada, you see we're talking aspirationally. I would say maybe more ambitious, because we aren't just aspiring.
That's
We do a lot of these things already. We are a great mining nation. If you didn't know, in December 2024, Canada set a new record for the amount of mineral products that we exported. We hit $10 billion in mineral product exports for the first time ever. Now, a lot of that, the things that pay the bills, I have to tell you though, is gold, potash, and coal.
Right. Yep.
And then nickel and copper and iron, one tier below that, and then some of the minor metals. And we'll get into the minor metals because those are important to our safety. Those pay the bills. Gold's doing tremendous right now. A lot of it coming from your area too. But there is so much more we could do better. And I always say, we're the second largest country in the world with only 40 million people. What that means is that we can export almost everything we can produce. Other countries are big. United States is a huge producer. China's a huge producer. They're also the most ravenous consumers.
Sure.
And so when you can export most of what you produce, that affords you the ability of soft and hard power in directing, your products to who needs them, to your friends, and sometimes to your enemies. It's not bad for your enemies to need you either. So what are the regulatory burdens? And it won't be any surprise to anyone in this room that we are not meeting our potential, that we could be producing more. And in fact, it was the Mining Association of Canada's annual report this year. Since 2012, our production of nickel, of graphite, I think, magnesium, are down between 38 and 40% since 2012. So you must think, from all the talk, that we're producing more of all these battery metals. We're producing fewer. We're down 9% in copper, and we're pretty much zilch in 2022, a little bit now more in rare earths and lithium. Not a major producer whatsoever in lithium rare earths, despite our potential. So how do we unleash some of these things? And you alluded to it. C69, it was kind of a bane of many people's existence for the last, since 2019. If you didn't know, it was passed Impact Assessment Act in 2019. That regime has passed one project, Cedar LNG, which it did so under substitution to BC. So they kind of only get half credit. And not all mines are approved under IA. So sometimes the federal government, I have to say, does not require that approval. But even for them to decide, that often takes time.
Yeah.
So simplifying our mining approval process at the federal level should mean usually don't do it. One project, one assessment, one decision. We have a constitution. It's a great constitution. It's very clear on who should be regulating mines. But I do have to say, I give the federal government a big hard time, and I don't like the Impact Assessment Act, but not every province is great at mining permitting in this country either. And if the provinces want to assume more of that jurisdiction, they better have more competence to do it. So we can all improve. And then obviously having great relations with First Nations, which is something that the sector is actually starting to get quite good at.
Yes.
So that's a major difference, I would say, from 2015, 2019, is we have a lot more tools, a lot more ideas.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing that Ontario and Canada's potential, with Sudbury at the center, to be an energy superpower and have an asymmetrical advantage with producing and exporting is pretty significant.
Yes.
We have to get out of our own way to a meaningful degree, right? So I want to just stick with you for a minute, and we talked at lunch about defense. Talk to us a little bit about, given your role with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, where you look at how energy intersects with global politics and economics. Talk a little bit about the opportunity for Canada, not just to reluctantly and with a lot of pouting and feet dragging meet our defense commitments. What's the opportunity for Canada to lead in national defense, in part through critical minerals?
Yeah. So what does it mean to be an energy and resource superpower is another way. And a few people are saying it, Ken Singer, Carney, Freeland, Polyev have all said it. What does that mean to be a superpower? And for me, let's be that arsenal of democracy. And we are seeing, we become dependent on China, and I think we can get into this a bit more after too, Matthew. We become dependent on China. We all appreciate that.
That's right.
For the things, the things that pay the bills, gold, potash, coal, that's one thing. The things that you need for a defense supply chain is a different thing. Those are often minor metals. They're niche. They're often byproducts. They're not the things that pay the bills, but they are the things we need.
Sure.
And China has developed a monopoly over it. So can Canada, looking at our European friends, just announced $800 billion for Rearm Europe, looking at the Americans' needs if they want us, we're here for them. We need a Western defense supply chain And you need a lot of raw materials to support that. And so can we be that provider to our allies? Will we step up? Or will we say, there's no business case, China's too cheap, we can't compete? Those are the options facing us right now. And I think there is a national security imperative, and it is in our national security interest to bridge, when there is a gap, to the list of those niche metals that we need to produce the munitions, the drones, all of those things.
Yeah. Well, I bet if we were to poll the room to a person, I bet everybody would be in favor of Canada stepping up and developing these materials to play a leadership role, because just giving up on our economy and prosperity and security, that's not an option. And I think the mayor captured that brilliantly. As Heather talks about the opportunity for Canada to lead in arming and securing the West, which is a key theme from the mayor's speech and central to Heather's work with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. That takes a lot of natural resources, as Heather said. It takes a lot of financial resources, too. And so as someone who spends a great deal of time in capital markets and understands what is investable and what is not investable in Canada, talk to us a little bit about Sudbury. Is there a compelling case for the investability of Sudbury as a critical minerals hub on Canada's path to being an energy superpower?
Absolutely. I mean, since I've been in Toronto, my career has been in the capital markets. I'm a securities lawyer at heart, and our firm is one of the leading firms in natural resource financing. And almost every time we see a boom in financing in mining, it starts with Northern Ontario and specifically in Sudbury. But what Sudbury doesn't have is the investment in infrastructure and secondary industries as it relates to mining. With respect to natural resources, exploration, and of course the development mines, once we get through the regulatory hurdles, it's quite well financed and it does well. But what we have is we have a foreign owner of our mines, or major of our mines. They are not as vested in the community as they should be. So we need outside third-party capital, along with government funding, to ensure the viability and the optimism that Paul is outlining here today is real and feasible. And it's going to take time. It's going to take delivering this message more and more to the public generally, to the capital markets. I mean, everybody comes to Toronto if they're going to raise equity capital for mining. Everybody comes to Toronto. It is the hub for equity capital for mining and natural resources in this country and in the world. And we need to ensure that that continues to happen. And we are. It does continue to happen. But we need private equity to think through secondary opportunities in Sudbury and Northern Ontario. We need government to lead that role, which we're starting to hear now. To hear both Carney and Paul Lefebvre say that they're going to make it a one-permit process, that is huge. That will make a big difference if we can make that happen. And you're absolutely right. The provincial government has to get behind it and do it with the federal government. And finally, in Sudbury, we have local politicians and local leadership that is driving forward in this regard.
Well, so I think I'm hearing that for Sudbury to be even further investable, to really leverage the wealth of natural resources that can make us safer and stronger and more prosperous, we need the right signals and the right investments from government, and capital will follow. Is that fair?
I think you're seeing that now. Yes, and that is fair. And I mean, these projects are so large and so cumbersome. And usually what gets in the way of them is government. And so we need government to lead the way, open these paths, and trust me, the capital will follow.
Okay, so on that note, let's go back to Mayor Paul, because you made a pitch for some further midstream processing capacity.
That's right.
Now, for those of us who don't have a deep mining background, I want to make sure that everybody walks out of here with a working sense of what it is you're asking for, okay? So unpack it for us in layman's terms, and then let's talk about why that could be the kind of market-moving investment from governments to unlock this huge potential.
So let's take it back. The province of Ontario, with the federal government support, has made a lot of investments in the downstream in the automobile EV sector. Like I said, with Stellantis, Honda, and Volkswagen. That's great. That's awesome. And the Premier has said, well, he wants a whole supply chain done in Ontario. Again, awesome. But when I talk to folks saying, well, where is the battery cell is going to come from? A bit of some big eyes saying, well, we're not sure yet. And then I say, well, where is the minerals going to come from to do that? And so The only way that we're able to do this is if there are those investments in more production and more supply in Northern Ontario of those materials that we need, the nickel, the cobalt, and the lithium. And that's why I wanted to recognize in my speech the ones with the lithium refinery and the cobalt refinery that is going to be coming on board in the province. Now, the other material that we need is nickel, and that's the nickel sulfate. So that's the powder that comes out of the smelters, right? And that is transformed, that goes into the pre-cathode anode materials. Okay. And so that, again, as I said, there's only one facility that's being constructed in Canada, and that's in Bécancour, Quebec, which is awesome. And we need about 5 of those in the country. Okay. Not just one, not just 2, more of those. And that's why, but we don't do that in Canada, right? And that's why I talked about going to Japan and South Korea to try to attract those battery manufacturers to come here, because they're part of that ecosystem. And because Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Honda don't do that, right? They need battery manufacturers. Right. Where are they going to set that up? The only place where it makes economic sense, I believe, and what I've been told by a lot of the people in that sector, is to be beside the smelter, put the pipe out into the nickel sulfide refinery, and from the nickel sulfide refinery, it goes into the PCAM. Right. And so those are jobs for us, and that's economic development. That is our economic sovereignty as well. So not to put too fine a point on it, but your pitch for this midstream processing capacity, the Premier has called very consistently and made serious investments behind this goal to have a fully integrated end-to-end EV supply chain in the province of Ontario. That's right. So not to be too reductionist about it, does he get that if we don't have this? No, we wouldn't have lithium, we would have cobalt, but then the nickel, again, it may be Sudbury nickel, but going somewhere else to be in a nickel sulfate plant, then shipped back into our province, which makes absolutely no sense because it'll probably be our own nickel. Right. And we have the processing capacities and the talent to do it and the land to do it and the resources to do it. Okay. So that's the next step. And there's been, again, in the past few years, there's been talk about where do we put this in Ontario. Sure. And kind of strangely, Sudbury's not really been at the table from what I'm told, which is kind of bizarre because, again, I think we're not well known. As Perry said, we got to come down here and say, hey, maybe not in the area, but this is what we do and this is who we are and we're the best at it in the world. But we're quiet, and often what happens too, and I want to mention this, is all of the challenges right now, the supply that we get out is basically all accounted for. It's sold out in the world, right? Our supply chains are already set up. So what I'm doing with promoting this, kind of disrupting those supply chains by asking for more supply to come on board as well. That's the only way that we're able to do this. Yeah. And talking to the Valleys of the world and to the Glencores of the world and Magna mining in the area to say, let's produce more. Can we have some more offtake of what you're producing to go into this plant? So that's changing minds and changing supply chains. And that's not easy for businesses that are established. But I believe with the geopolitical world that we're facing right now, that needs to happen. Well, I think that they're going to find it tough to ignore Sudbury after today. So mission likely accomplished.
If I could add one.
Please, yeah.
Paul, I mean, I've been trying to figure out how mining works for 30 years. So, I'm not sure that everybody in the audience here will understand everything that we just said. But what needs to be said is supply is not an issue, right? What people need to realize, there's more ore in the Sudbury Basin than the world can handle right now. And we have to get it, process it, and sell it. And that is a diamond in the rough, nickel in the rough for this entire country. And it's so underutilized and not capitalized on. And we just have to do everything, not just for Sudbury. And obviously, I wear Sudbury in my heart, but for this country. It makes a huge difference for this country. We should be known as a natural resource nation. I understand technology is important. I understand innovation is important. I understand all of that's important. But if you want to talk about where Canada can lead, it's in natural resources. And Sudbury's that heart of where our future can be. And we need to capitalize on that as a nation, not just as people that are proud of the North. So Heather, when you hear Perry say, we've got all the ore that the world can handle if we can get it processed. Talk to us a little bit about who's the competition out there. When you look at who else is producing and processing nickel, you have Canada, a stable, democratic, liberal, market-based economy. And what are the other options?
Yeah, so So we're talking about China now. So, I mean, you know, the world's a big place. Canada's a big country, but there's a lot of geography out there, and there's a lot of ore. And so Indonesia is, or a nickel competitor, that kind of thing. South America, Bolivia, Chile, they produce a lot of copper, all these things. And so, this is where I want to get to the point when we're talk about the defense supply chain and our security and what's in the national interest. What we've realized, I think, maybe in the last 10 or 15 years, is the stranglehold that China has developed on processing of many of these things. That even when the copper or the nickel is produced somewhere else, is mined somewhere else, extracted, it goes to China for that processing. And this is the dilemma that we've now come into. So then, I'll get into some of the weeds here. So so I think with COVID, we started to see our supply chains were pretty vulnerable, more vulnerable than we wanted to be, and then exacerbated when Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yes.
And you start to think, oh, those silly Europeans, how could they be so dependent on Russian gas? And then you look at yourselves and say, we are at least that dependent on China for our mineral, those raw materials. And so how do we get off that dependence of China in the event that they attacked Taiwan and you wanted to apply sanctions? Could you? And already in the last year, they have put export restrictions, mostly for the United States, in some cases for others, on things like bismuth, antimony, germany, gallium, and a variety of rare earths. So we know the list. We know China's list of things that they can use to extort or to punish or get leverage. NATO put out a list broadly reflecting this in December. I'll get into the details for a few of you will care about this. Aluminum, beryllium, cobalt, gallium, germanium, graphite, lithium, manganese, platinum, rare earths, titanium, and tungsten. Some of those are familiar to you.
Yep.
So the ones that we would be looking at Sudbury and Ontario for, obviously, is the platinum.
Yep.
Would be on your list, and cobalt. Aluminum, we know what's happening in Quebec. I mean, and that came from defense. That's World War II defense supply chains. I'm looking at the Consul General. No, I'm not meaning to point my finger. We developed those supply chains with the United States in World War II. And because you do not have a defense supply chain, you cannot ramp up in the event of a conflict without aluminum, without steel, and without nickel. Those are big things. But the list I just gave you is kind of those again, minor metals that have much smaller global markets, which is why I think some of the big players maybe, wash their hands of it. China could do it cheaper, and China did it cheaper, and it's very hard to compete with them on price. But now we're saying, it's not going to be a $5 billion market for us to get into germanium. But we better have enough germanium that we do not need China to do it. Anyways, to maybe wind this up a little bit, we have some great mining processing in Canada. Sudbury is one hub, Bécancour. Rio Tinto does a lot of it in Quebec. Vale does a lot of it, Teck does a lot of it in Trail, BC. Saskatchewan has a little burgeoning rare earths refining processing. We have a lot of this. We have this entire list in Canada. It's usually a byproduct of something that makes money.
That's right.
And so it shouldn't be that hard. It'd be a little bit expensive, and you need a little bit of R&D, but it should not be that hard for us to turn, the zinc, the byproduct of zinc, into germanium and indium, to turn the byproduct of copper into and of aluminum processing into gallium. Right. And so we can lament, it takes us 17 years to build a mine from discovery to production. We have some of this stuff just sitting there. It's not economic today, but it's literally just sitting there. And we just need to invest in the processing so that Canada can be that provider. And that is the bottleneck, is the processing. It is the middle part. As you said, there's a lot of ore in this world. The problem is not the supply. The problem is who can process it. And when it comes down to, Europe just asked their citizens to stockpile 72 hours worth of food. At some point, and you see it in Ukraine, this becomes a war of attrition. Who has the manufacturing capacity to outlast their adversary in the case of a war between Russia and Ukraine, between China and the United States? And we know right now China's at the top of the list. They have more manufacturing capacity and could outlast any of us. And so we need right now to get some of that processing facility capacity so that we will not be in a position where we're running out of the things that you need to make F-35s or to make drones or make munitions. Right. We have it all right now.
So I think that's a great call to arms. And on that note, I just want to remind the audience, you've got those cards on the table. Our panelists would love to hear from you, so please don't hesitate. Use those. We're going to go to Q&A pretty soon. Before giving the last word to the mayor, and remind me, Heather, I never want to be on the business end of that point you got going on.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm sitting here.
Me too. You look tense over
I
there.
use 2 fingers, so it's not so aggressive.
That's right. So before we go to Paul to kind of wrap things up, Perry, can you just help us pull the curtain back a little bit further on Sudbury? Because since I've had the privilege of getting to work a little bit with folks and institutions in the city, like I have fallen in love with it. And people who have not made the time, the investment of time to get to know Sudbury, like they're really missing out. And something that's interesting about Sudbury too is that it is the hub city for Northeastern Ontario. So you mentioned great post-secondary economic institution, or post-secondary education rather, institutions. Health Sciences North, huge mandate, huge catchment. Just pull back the curtain a little bit further on Sudbury as a city and as a regional capital for folks who may not have had the opportunity to spend much time there.
Sure. Well, first of all, it's awesome. It's my hometown, and it's a fantastic place to visit and to live. I get it. For those of you from Toronto, I drive there regularly. It's 3 hours and 10 minutes going the speed limit. So it's not, most people think it's 8 or 10 hours. When people come to a city or a new location to live, they think of 2 things, education and healthcare. And Sudbury's well-defined and well-fitted in both those areas. We have great post-secondary education. Our school boards are great. And Health Sciences North has had its challenges, but is coming out the other end and really is going to be a unique world-class healthcare facility in due course, very soon, actually. Under its new leadership, they are doing all the right things.
That's great.
And I am confident that anybody that moves to Sudbury will feel comfortable that they will have the needed healthcare for all ages moving forward.
That's true.
Yeah. And I'm directly involved with them through Sunnybrook Hospital and Sick Kids Hospital. There are all kinds of alliances and partnerships that are being done between the North and these hospitals, and I'm sure other hospitals that I'm just not familiar with in the GTA. And I can tell you that those are the 2 things people ask about if we're going to have secondary institutions or secondary industry within Sudbury. They're going to ask about our healthcare. They're going to ask about the education, and both of those are top-notch in the city. So, and it's a fun place to be. But it's a great place in the summer, a little cold in the winter, but it's a true Canadian city and one that's worth thinking about and visiting.
Well, thank you. I'm going to ask Colleen if she'd like to have her team round up any questions, or perhaps folks can start thinking about what they might like to just bring to us from the floor. But it looks like we're okay. I'm getting the safe sign. On that note, anybody going to the home opener today? Hands up. Anybody going to Blue Jays home opener? Nobody. No. Well, you go watch it at home. It's going to be a great game. Listen, we should wrap here. Mayor, just a quick last word to you before we turn back to Karen Restwell.
Thank you. And that's why we have Perry as our ambassador, right?
Absolutely.
for the sales pitch for Sudbury. Again, just thank you, everyone, for taking the time to come here to maybe you've learned a bit. Maybe this is something that you deal with in your daily lives on a regular basis with. But it goes to show the importance of critical minerals in our country, in our province, and certainly for Sudbury, as we play a role in that. We've done it for decades. We want to continue doing that, but we need the partners, and that's certainly teaming up with the government's levels. We're trying to certainly expand our capacity of what we can do, and we have a very unique value proposition for our country, and we're going to continue doing that. It's supporters like you that believe in critical minerals and certainly believe in our country that we'll be able to do it together. Thank you. Thank you.
Good job.
I'd like to debunk Perry's statement that it takes 3 hours and 10 minutes. If there's no Muskoka traffic, maybe?
Fridays afternoon.
Good, right? Yeah, definitely not Fridays. No. but you're an early riser. You're out there at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m.?
No, this day. I'm just getting home around then.
De la part du Club Canadien de Toronto, un gros merci. On behalf of the Canadian Club Toronto, I want to thank Mayor Lefebvre, Perry, Heather, and Matthew for outlining the urgency of strengthening our minerals sector and leveraging the opportunities that are now more urgent than ever. And thanks to each of you for your leadership. Leadership for Sudbury, for Atikmiksheng and Wanapitei First Nations, for the First Nations within Robinson-Huron Treaty, which mine is, for Ontario, and for Canada writ large. Thank you so much for everything that you do to contribute to strengthening our economy and our society. Before we close, let me mention a few of our upcoming events. I hope you can join us next Thursday, April 3rd, when the Honourable Susan Holt, Premier of New Brunswick, will be at our podium. We will welcome François Poirier, CEO of TC Energy, on April 10th for breakfast. And we are just announcing today, on April 23rd, we will discuss Canada's Arctic Imperative with Natan Obed, President of ITK, Sean Boyd, Chair of Agnico Eagle. Heather Exner-Perot is making a return. She's hot. Sign her up while she's free. Now's the time. From Macdonald-Laurier Institute, and Jessica Shadian, CEO of Arctic 360, for one of the most important conversations of the election, securing Canada's Arctic. Please visit our website, canadianclub.org, for more information. And one more round of thanks, and this is for the snafu, one more round of thanks to the City of Sudbury for supporting the event today. And finally, I would like to thank our AV supplier, VVC Live, for facilitating today's event. And thanks to everyone of you for being here today, for traveling in from Sudbury, from across the country, wherever, or maybe even your office on Bay Street, however far or close that you traveled. Thank you so much. The crowd really does make a difference here. Thanks for joining us for this conversation. Take care, everyone. Thank you.